All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Millennials Are Old podcast. And you know what? Wait a second. I think I see somebody else on the recording here. It's normally just you, Brian.
Yeah, this is spooky.
Did we get a hacker? Somebody named AJ. Wait, who the fuck is this?
Hello?
Yeah,
Hey,
who are you?
guys.
Ah!
What's up, guys? Just enjoying some interesting comedy here recently.
Some really
So,
good comedy.
I'm AJ.
Hell yeah. This is our first guest since Sean Justice and Scott Galbraith. I guess we have one of my friends who just hacked into the call. How'd you hack in here, man?
I don't know. I got on my phone, saw a message from Taylor, something about a podcast, and all of a sudden, I'm in a group call.
It seems like this is a setup on Taylor's end.
Sorry, man. I meant to send this just to Brian, but I guess I accidentally included you here. Fuck. All right. Well, you know what? Now that you're here, because the initial idea for this episode was me and Brian were going to go over in depth every single episode of Doctor Who, every single one. And we were going to rank all the doctors by how much we want to suck them off. But I guess now we're doing something different. So you know what, Anthony? I want to review something a little bit different, but something that relates to some other episodes that we've done before. How about we review the Tom Myers album, Make America Innate Again? And I think I want to review this primarily because, Anthony, I believe you were the very first person to receive a legal bong hit transplant. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I experienced one earlier. I'm recovering gradually, but yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
I
Why,
hope you're doing
Tom?
all right.
Yeah, recovering slowly, but yeah, the procedure was a success, and I think I might need another later.
Okay, well, I'm just glad that we could be here for you while you're going through this. You need to take a break. I understand that probably put you through a lot of trauma.
Yeah, the recovery process takes a little while, but we're all well on our way.
Well, you know what, AJ? I'm really glad that you have tried pot, just like Tom Myers has tried pot.
Yeah, this guy's definitely done drugs, for sure.
He sounds like it, most definitely. I think I'd want to do drugs with Tom Myers if I had the chance.
Yeah, he sounds like he'd be a really cool guy to get fucked up with. Chill as shit.
And you know what,
Jeez.
Brian? I always ask you, because especially on my episodes, I want to get your opinions before my own. What did you know about Tom Myers before I recommended it for this episode?
You know, I know like the Cometown guys make fun of him, and then I don't know anything about him, actually. I kind of avoid guys like this, to be honest. Kind of blew the lead there. I was going to wait till we got more into it to say that, but I knew that he was on Chapo, and I know it was like a bit that they were like kind of like making fun of him, but it was the most boring episode of Chapo I'd ever heard, so I don't even remember it. Oh, and I know he did a joke about eating Hillary Clinton's pussy, which is like the funniest I've ever heard. I think about it all the time because it's so fucked up.
Jesus,
You know-
he looks kind of like Hillary Clinton's pussy a little bit with the hair.
You know what, though, Brian? Hilariously enough, when that episode of Chapo was released, it was actually released the same week I was in Portland visiting you. So I was riding the Max train listening to that episode.
Yeah,
And I'm like-
I think we were meeting up. We were like on our way to meet up downtown.
Yeah.
When I was listening to it.
And I'm like, wait, Tom Myers is on this episode? What the fuck? And I had to look at the description. I'm like, no fucking way. They got Tom Myers to be on Chapo. This is amazing. But yeah, so Anthony, let me ask you, what did you know about Tom Myers?
Absolutely nothing. My experience with comedians is pretty basic, pretty watered down. But, in conversations with you, Taylor, I found this great man next to the legendary Mike Diesel, as mentioned in the Cometown podcast that you had recommended in the past. Like, you really opened my eyes to a whole new, different breed of comedian, and I can't get enough of it.
Well, Anthony, I hope that Tom Myers wasn't too fucked up for you.
I was on the edge of my seat the whole set. It was just crazy.
I was also on the edge of my seat listening to this album, but I was on the edge of my seat with my head in my hands in my lap. That's mostly what I was doing. Now, I will say, though, too, another connection that, Anthony and I have with Cometown and Tom Myers is we actually saw Nick Mullen together earlier this year. And I mentioned to you last night before, of course, we started recording, that Nick Mullen is a strong second place for the DC Baltimore comedy scene. And that's saying a lot because, man, he is not an amazing comedian live. Would you agree with that, Anthony?
Oh, I would definitely agree. Like, it was a good show, couple solid laughs, but we're still working out his sets and, his build. And it seemed like he wanted to get a paycheck and get out of there for a bit. But if that's two in what you said, Maryland?
Yeah, Maryland, like Baltimore, DC comedy scene, yeah.
Yeah. So if he's number two, I want to see like a solid in the 20s because, man, that's my pace.
I mean, that would probably be like maybe somebody, yeah, like Mike Diesel or like Greg Pahanish or even like Tom Flood. That would be like a top 20 Baltimore fucking DC comedian.
I don't want to fire off too strong right away, but like, man, just the secondhand cringe I feel some parts of this set, with either Tom Meyer or Nick Mullen. Oh my goodness.
And also, so the reason I wanted to cover this episode, along with the fact that it has so many connections with the podcast, with Anthony, and also, of course, with Brian here, who's the third wheel now. No, I'm just kidding. But the connection I wanted to make with the podcast itself, right, is that we have reviewed two separate things that I think very much relate to Tom Myers and this comedy special. Yep. So one is The Day the Laughter Died by Andrew Dice Clay, which that is an intentional piece of like anti-comedy that's actually genius. And this is not.
This is like the inverse of that. I was thinking about it today. So the way Dice always describes The Day the Laughter Died, he says this to a room of just cutting silence when the audience is just appalled by how he's acting. He says, tonight isn't about laughter. It's about comedy. And I was thinking, Make America Innate Again, it's the inverse of that. It's all about jokes. It's all about, I've got the cadence of a joke. I've got a setup and a punchline. But it's not about comedy. Nobody's laughing. The most prominent laughter you hear the whole fucking special is a guy going, which is like how I laugh at my coworkers when I want them to stop talking.
Right, or Tom Meyer himself.
Yeah, laughing at his own fucking jokes.
Yeah, that's what killed me, just the lack of patience for the punchline and proceeding to just laugh for everyone else.
Yeah, God, it's fucking wild. And then also another connection I wanted to make, because Tom Myers has a lot of relation to Arthur Chu, who is the subject of course, the documentary Who is Arthur Chu? In the fact that, and I learned this, Tom Myers is the exact same age as Arthur Chu. He's like a fail guy who had a modicum, like 15 minutes of fame, of success, absolutely fucking blew it, a failure to launch guy. And he's also a cucked lib. Like, it's just so many connections you can make with Tom Myers and Arthur Chu. It's hilarious.
Well, the one thing that I will give him that I have not seen from Tom yet is that eventually Arthur logged off. He probably has a normal job now and doesn't post, which is the highest level of self-awareness that any of these guys can get to. I don't know if Tom's going to get there.
He will not. And in fact, well, let's get into some details here, because I really want to talk about some of these details because they're hilarious. So this album was released in 2018. You wouldn't believe it because all the references are from 2007 and before, but it was released in 2018. It does not have a parental advisory sticker. I looked specifically for a CD copy of this album and I could not find one. It was, of course, produced by the legendary comedian Tom Myers. It was performed by him. It was released and distributed by Tom Myers Entertainment. That was the entertainment company listed on his website. The album is 35 minutes long, which makes it the shortest thing we've ever reviewed on the podcast.
Mercifully, because every time I listened to this, I forgot that I was supposed to be like taking notes on it. I would literally be like, oh, it's good when we review albums because I can listen to it while I'm doing other shit and still be really engaged. But I would forget that I was supposed to be listening and have to be like, I have to fucking back up 5 minutes and listen to what he said.
Given it's my first appearance on the pod and, that I'm new to this whole thing, I really tried to dig deep and do some research and try to really keep up with the bits. I probably listened to this thing 4 or 5 times, but given it was so condensed, it didn't seem like any real undertaking. I had to convince other people to listen to it with me so I could gauge their response to make sure, I was
make sure it's not just you.
Yeah, these sick jokes.
You know what? As Rick McCallum, who was the producer of The Phantom Menace, said, it's just so dense. There's just so much going on. Oh, fuck. And also, yes, I could not find a production budget or sales numbers, but according to Tom Myers, after Nick Mullen made fun of Tom Myers, the albums sold exponentially more. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if it sold 10 copies and now it sold 20 copies. I don't know what that means, but what the fuck ever. And these last part of the details I have here is insane. So on Amazon, it has a perfect 5 out of 5, which is the highest thing I've ever seen on Amazon for something we reviewed.
Mysterious.
Literally has a perfect 5 out of 5. And on Rate Your Music, which is the review site that we've used for various audio recordings, such as comedy specials and albums, it has a 3.1 out of 5, which is higher than Lulu, Saint Anger, and Angelic to the Core, Brian.
I mean, it's not better than Angelic to the Core. I'm sorry. Maybe the other ones.
Oh, God, that is wild to me. The fact that anybody rated this more than a 1 out of 5 on Rate Your Music, unironically, is insane to me.
Well, they were being epic.
There weren't any written reviews, though. That's the thing for Rate Your Music.
Well, they must have been all the teethless women from small towns he was mentioning in the bit.
Or Hillary Clinton. I know that's a different special, but I just can't stop thinking about it.
Speaking of the album, fuck, I forget its name. The Metallica album, I actually had like a boomer coworker defend Saint Anger.
It's
But, like,
honestly better than people say it is. It's a good album.
Right. They said it aged well, and I was like, you could take it that way.
I think there is a couple of good songs on it. I think it could be mixed differently. I would never argue about it either.
Very fair. But yeah, so let's get into some trivia here. And I did a lot of research to find as much information as I possibly could about Tom Myers and this comedy special. No joke. I went through like 4 or 5 hours of various audio recordings of people talking about Tom Myers.
There is a wealth of Tom Myers content also.
That is also very true, yes. I mean, he's been on everything from the Real Ass podcast to Come Town to Chapo to various other smaller podcasts. But here's some trivia I found. So this album was recorded in March of 2018 at the Cultural Arts Center in Havre de Grace, Maryland, which the opening title of this album is Hello, Havre de Grace, which anybody who's not familiar with Maryland, and I don't think any of us have been to Maryland. You know, Anthony, you used to live in Kentucky. Have you ever been to Maryland?
No, the closest I got was to West Virginia.
But he also has a very good West Virginia joke in this comedy special that I would love to talk about once we get to that point. So Havre de Grace is, once again, he says that as the title, the population of Havre de Grace is less than 15,000 people.
So this was a big deal there.
A big deal, yes.
Yeah. We got a headliner is at the local, community theater.
They're like, oh shit, Tom Myers is here.
It kind of looked like a cafe or maybe just a stand-up, just little ramshack bar.
Yeah, God, what the fuck? Yeah, Brian, could you imagine if you or I did a comedy special and be like, hello, De Pere, Wisconsin?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Like, what the fuck?
Hello, Sheboygan.
Which, by the way, is 3 times larger than Havre de Grace.
Oh my God, when you say it like that, it's like chilling.
Yeah. So he is thinking big, very clearly here. And the next trivia fact I have here, and I alluded to it earlier, but according to the YouTuber Ghost Gum, who released a recent video about Tom Myers, he was born in Towson, Maryland in 1983, home of Towson University. And also, the only thing I know about Towson University besides that is it was home to a white student union whose leader was Matthew Heimbach. Now, Brian, you know about Matthew Heimbach, right?
I might not. I don't think I do.
So Matthew Heimbach, once again, he led this white student union at Towson University. He was a guy who led the Traditionalist Worker Party, who were most well known for beating up a black journalist at Unite the Right rally. And also, he was severely beaten after he fucked his stepdad's wife, and he caught him in the act, and his stepdad beat the shit out of him. That literally happened.
In fact, his stepdad's wife, that's not his mother.
That's not his mother. And in a trailer park.
I see. And this relates to Tom Meyer. How?
Well, so here's the thing, Brian, is that once we get to the politics section, I'm surprised he didn't bring that up. But to be fair, that was a reference past 2006. So, of course, he didn't make that reference.
Well, and also he wouldn't bring up, because, okay, we'll get into it, I'm sure. He sees himself as like a provocateur. He wouldn't actually bring up anything like that.
Well, that's the thing, though, Brian, is that he wouldn't bring that up because he doesn't know how humans have sex either. So he doesn't have any context.
He is so horny and he doesn't know how people fuck. He's so horny.
He might feel horny, but his body doesn't.
Yeah, he doesn't. Exactly. He thinks about sex, but he doesn't experience the sensation of it. The primal urge isn't in him. He's just like, boy, I sure do like to sex.
I have one thing to say about that, which is I agree with that wholeheartedly. I watched a YouTube video a long time ago about a man who never underwent puberty, and Tom Myers looks like a balding version of somebody who never went through puberty. So that makes sense.
Looks like a preteen in a large cloak.
Yeah.
They put a bald cap on him.
If you saw a dude that looked like Tom Myers and you didn't hear him say any of the fucking dumb shit he says, and someone made fun of him and you saw his sad face, you'd be like, ah, right? Just me?
Yeah.
Leave this droopy dog looking motherfucker alone. Yeah. But then he starts talking and you're like, fuck this guy.
Well, and that's the thing, Brian. If you ever see a picture of Tom Myers, just look it up on the internet, and you'll think, like, man, Ellen DeGeneres has aged very poor.
I mean, that's one of the jokes that he does that gets, like, a laugh. So he's self-deprecating, but not in the right way. Every once in a while, he accidentally says something that's true, and the audience laughs way harder at it.
Well, and like he could have made that bit so much better. He looks like Ellen DeGeneres' brother, who's been hiding in the closet for the past 20 years, has had a roommate for the past 20 years.
Makes more sense. Yeah.
That is legitimately no bullshit, Anthony. That is a better joke than he tells.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing, right? Tom Myers, he understands how a joke is constructed. He understands that you have a setup and you have a punchline, and that you speak with a certain snarky cadence. And that's a joke. None of his jokes mean anything. They don't make sense. He doesn't think about what they're about. He just knows setup, punchline, da-da-da.
We discussed yesterday just a little bit of restructuring, and he would be like a new man, maybe like some hair plugs. And, I'm sorry for taking the easy digs at him, because I have to pick on him. But, with a little bit of restructuring, he'd be such a better comedian.
Well, yeah, because he clearly has studied, and I don't want to give him much credit at all. I don't really like that much stand-up. I mean, I like some, and then there's a lot that I'm just bored by. But he's clearly studied how to write a stand-up joke. He just hasn't put any thought into what those jokes are, I guess. But it's like he could sit and write for probably 40 more minutes, and it still wouldn't be good, but it'd be something.
Oh, man. But okay, so a couple more trivia facts I have here. And these last couple ones are so revealing about his personality. So he was the former chairman of the Harford. I thought it was Hartford, but apparently it's Harford. And apparently in Maryland, they're too cheap to put a T on the name of their county, I guess. But he was the chairman of the Harford County Young Democrats, and he got kicked out of that because he literally aged out of it.
Imagine if he was cool enough to make a joke about that.
Yeah, you have to be pretty lame for the Democrats to tell you to leave.
Imagine being so old you get kicked out of the Democrats.
Jesus.
Was he like 22? He's like hanging out with a bunch of middle schoolers or whatever?
Well, speaking of middle schoolers, he was also a caller for his local Little League softball team, not soft team. Jesus fucking Christ. That makes it sound way worse. But
his soft team.
Yeah.
This motherfucker said soft team.
That's my fucking Brian Quimby flub for the week, if I include that in here.
Flub.
Yeah. But yeah, so he was a caller for a Little League softball team, which is very strange because he doesn't have any children. He's not religious either. So why is he interacting with so many young people all the time?
I don't necessarily, I want to be mean about that, but look at him.
I could imagine, just being in the Young Democrat Society or whatever it was, that him getting kicked out of that establishment to get away from those teenagers got him to stop wearing his little Ben Shapiro suit. That might have been the turning point when he put down his little briefcase and went, you know what, we got to do something with my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was his own, I can't think of it. The religious practice when boys become men in Judaism. Maybe it's the Come Town bits that are bleeding back into my brain after you guys mentioned it with Ben Shapiro and the Jewish bits.
They lifted him up in the chair and they threw him out on the street.
Yeah.
Yep. Jeez.
All right. And the last fact I have here, and this is the one that makes his most infamous bit make so much sense. So Tom Myers has worked at 7-Eleven in the past. And as far as I'm aware of, his most recent job that he still holds is an assistant manager at a Mexican restaurant in Maryland. So I don't know how possibly good that could be or how authentic that could be. But so a little context here. The very earliest material I can find of Tom Myers on the internet actually doing comedy is his appearance on what was referred to as the Ed Schrader Show, which was, I should say, a local parody talk show, public access thing made by some random college students. And they invited Tom on clearly as a joke. They didn't respect him. They don't think his comedy is good. And this was 15 years ago they did this, by the way. So he's been a laughingstock in comedy for at least 15 fucking years. And in this segment, he, of course, debuted his infamous bong hit transplant joke, which I have alluded to in the earlier part of this episode. And I'm not even going to talk about the setup of the joke. I'm just going to put the clip of the joke about right here.
How you guys doing tonight? Everybody having a good time so far? Yeah, I'm in kind of a weird mood myself. I was on my way down here. I stopped at a convenience store. I'm waiting in line to pay, and the guy in front of me puts down a dozen donuts, 2 big bags of Doritos, one of those cheapo 1-gallon bottles of the generic brand fruit punch, and a nasty, old, rotting banana. And he turns to the clerk and says to him, "My girlfriend just had an operation and she can only eat certain things." I look at him and I go, "Yeah, right. What, did she have a bong hit transplant?" That guy's in here right now, isn't he? Oh, shit.
But yeah, so that is the bong hit transplant joke. So I do want to talk about the bong hit transplant joke a little bit because it's so emblematic of Tom Meyer's delivery overall. He has an okay setup. He says something along the lines of, I was waiting in line at 7-Eleven. The person behind me bought a bunch of random things. And like the setup of the joke is good, but he eats shit on the delivery. It's hilarious because it's actually not a bad delivery, but he has no confidence in it at all.
He jumped off a bridge and a bird hit him in the face, is the equivalent. And the polite applause and laughter just kills me because it makes it that much funnier. Solid joke.
Yeah, and what's funny about that Ed Schrader appearance is, unlike this comedy special that we're about to talk about, like some people do laugh at his material, but he does 3 minutes at the Ed Schrader show, and I shit you not, nobody's laughing, and including the host at one point just has his head in his hand, just like, what the fuck did I put this guy on my show for? That's not a joke. Like, it's genuinely pretty hard to watch. It's really sad.
Well, like even the phrase bong hit transplant, right? It's that thing again of he knows the joke is guys buying a bunch of food because stoner. He doesn't seem to know what a bong is. He doesn't seem to know what a transplant is. He knows, what was it? A bong hit transplant? What does that mean?
When does bong become like appendage?
Yeah, when would that ever be a thing? And the easy answer, if you're Tom, is to say it's a joke. Yeah, I fucking know. It doesn't mean anything. It's just fucking word salad.
Well, and like you mentioned earlier, Taylor, that he has worked at a 7-Eleven in the past.
Yeah, no, he worked at the 7. He wasn't waiting in line at the 7-Eleven. He worked at the 7-Eleven, which makes the joke even funnier in my opinion, because he's just like, oh shit, I don't need people to know I work at 7-Eleven. Let me be behind the guy at 7-Eleven.
That's so much more depressing, just knowing that like this didn't happen. He saw a stoned teenager buying a bunch of shit that gave him a bullshit excuse, because they were probably like really nervous that they were high.
Yeah.
I don't know if Maryland is legal. And he thought, oh, that would have been funny if I had something witty to say, probably in the shower after his shift ended.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, considering that special, or I should say his appearance on Ed Schrader was done in 2008, it definitely was not legal in Maryland at that point.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Too many transplants.
Yeah, your ability to tell dates and your memories are just like completely out of whack.
That's what happens, man. Part of the recovery process.
Interesting to me that Tom would lie about having a normal job like working at a 7-Eleven because, boy, he has contempt for other people, huh? Like, he doesn't think he does, but boy, he just has a whole bit in here about how people don't like his jokes because they can't relate to how weird his humor is.
So to be fair, his humor is weird and off-putting, but probably not the way he wants it to be.
Just depressing, man.
It would be better, so much better, if it was intentionally that awkward, because he could play into that. It's painful, and like he knows it's there. He just wants to fight it and look for the one guy in the crowd that just really gets him.
Well, and what kills me about the polite applause and the little chuckles in this special are that it's so hard to really bomb because the audience at a comedy club, they want to laugh. They want you to do well. They want to have a good time. So it's almost like the audience is like forcing it out of themselves. And that hurts so much worse than like for me listening to it than if he was just getting heckled or booed.
Yeah, God. We keep talking about the sadness of this album, so let's get into it. I'm not going to go super in-depth with all these jokes because we can go on for 4 hours, but I do want to highlight a couple of them. So the very first joke of the special is Tom Meyer says something about when my girlfriend and I want to have sex, which, by the way, he's done this joke for like 10 years at this point. He doesn't have a girlfriend. He hasn't dated in like 10 years as of this special. So he's doing a joke that's not been relevant for the better part of a decade. He's just like, yeah, what is it? Like the weather report about my dick, and it's like, well, if you get less than 6 inches, you're disappointed. And it's like, wait, your dick changes that much in length when are you like half chub trying to fuck your girlfriend? Like, what is the joke?
He relates it to the snow day, whether it's like kids sitting around and waiting to see if they're going to get 6 inches or 3, and if you have to relate your penis to like something kids are staring
50% when around.
That's the one thing. Well, Tom Myers doesn't understand how sex works. We need to keep mentioning that because it's so obvious.
Well, like sex just hasn't worked for him. Like it's a gamble, man. Like erectile dysfunction at what? Like you said he was 35? Yeah, 36 at the time?
He's 35, yes. But to be fair, once again, this is a 10-year-old joke, so he would have been 25 at this point.
Dude, failure to perform. That was before Hims existed, not a sponsor.
Imagine being 25 years old and be like, well, I'm going to give you half of my dick. Well, okay, never mind. I don't want to think about Tom's dick that much more, but it is like genuinely like, what is the joke? It doesn't make any sense.
The funniest part is you don't want to think about his dick, and you also don't want to think about his dick anywhere near children, but he brings both of them together in a wonderful
Such
conglomeration.
frequency.
Oh, yeah, just such a shit pile that it kind of works.
I just want to say, I assume that the head of Tom's dick has pubic hair that is exactly the same as his hairline around the head of it.
He's never trimmed it, so it's just climbed the shaft.
Yes.
Oh, shit. And you know what? I also want to talk about some jokes that almost work. So he has a joke about how his aunt like pulls the plug on various appliances at work and how she got fired for it. And it's like, well, she was working at a hospice, which is almost funny. But the problem is, once again, he fucks up the landing. And also, like, a hospice is also places where people are going to die soon anyways.
You should have said hospital.
Yeah, or he could have said, like, maybe the neonatal unit. That would have been funnier. Something where, like, it's not obvious that people are going to die in 2 days anyways.
Well, yeah, the neonatal with the premature babies would have been way funnier.
Yeah, it would have been good. I think, too, part of the thing, because I had a couple other moments like that. He does a joke about the GPS having the Paul Walker voice and keep telling him not to turn at curbs. If you're going to do those, like, non sequitur, like, quote-unquote dark jokes, you have to, I think, have a level of detachment, like a Stephen Wright or Mitch Hedberg, you know. When they do that and it's just a single sentence and you're kind of taken aback because they sound so removed from it. Tom's whole thing is well, and then, you know, she kept pulling the plug out of the appliances. I think he's mugging so much for the audience and doing his kind of like snark voice that the shock of it doesn't really hit. I think it's not the only problem, but it's part of a problem with those bits for me. That makes them not quite land.
I think except for maybe one joke, I think this entire comedy special is just either nonsense, the landing doesn't quite right, or it's just not funny. Like, that's 99% of the jokes in this comedy special for me. I laughed genuinely once. And you know what? Speaking of AJ, I finally want to get to that joke. So this is a joke about West Virginia. So you know exactly what joke I'm talking about, correct?
Yes, I do. It caught me off guard because I'm geographically like challenged. Can't tell you what state's next to another one, but out of all of them, I'm like, why the hell did you pick West Virginia of all the people that aren't on the internet that are leaving you alone? But an easy dig on his end.
And I think that one probably hits you more personally because I don't want to dox anybody necessarily, but both your partner and your roommate are from West Virginia.
Right. See, you know, it's okay. We can talk about it on the pod. They can't track down the shed I was living out of. I would be surprised if they could.
So are we going to war with Tom now? Because we'll ride with you, AJ. It's us versus Tom now.
See, you know, not to get into current events, but, you know, it was the whole like zombie apocalypse that was going to happen with COVID that even brought me out there. I was getting ready.
Oh, man. But yeah, no, I thought that joke was good. It was about seceding from the Union and how West Virginia did it because they didn't want to be seen as like backwards, toothless rednecks, which, okay. So that's another thing we need to talk about with Tom's elitism because he is a shit lib. He's from Maryland. Maryland has to have probably one of the most shit lib Democratic parties I could possibly think of. I mean, you know, you're in Washington, D.C.'s backyard. I mean, there's not a lot of Bernie Democrats or like Bernie like left lib people in Maryland. I can imagine.
It's all a big suburb.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. So, but he thinks he's like part of that elite club, and it's like, no, you live with your parents. You've never lived outside your home county, and you're an assistant manager at a Mexican restaurant. You have more in common with West Virginians than you do your Maryland local politicians, dude. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, he thinks he's part of that, like, lib elite. Like, I'm very cultured, and I recognize what's best for everyone. He also thinks that he's, like, this dangerous psycho, like Lenny Bruce.
Oh, yes, I do want to get to that later on. So, spoilers, because I took the quote that he did word for word on that news video that he did. He literally compares himself to George Carlin and Lenny Bruce and Mort Saul. Like, insane. Just incredible. And also, this whole segment, this one right here, so we didn't go over the titles, but who cares for the most part. But this title is called Life Hacks. There's no life hacks on the entire title here. None at all. Literally none.
I don't even think that phrase really comes up.
No, it doesn't.
Life hack, don't be from West Virginia. And I think I've gathered maybe why he's so spiteful. You know, you mentioned this came out in 2018. Based off of the commercial I saw for this special, this tiny little special, it looked like it came from 2008, like a lot of his material, except for the Make America Great Again, rip-off symbolism, of course. So maybe that's it, because in West Virginia, they're flying everywhere still.
He felt like he was really taking a leap there, going like, I'll take these West Virginians on with their Trump shit.
I actually do disagree. I think that commercial looks like it came out in 1998, to be honest with you. That is like such an old-ass commercial, which, speaking of, there's also reference to a sex scene in a Sidney Lumet movie called When the Devil Knows You're Dead, or Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, which, by the way, was a movie that came out in like 2007. An 11-year-old movie when this album came out. Like, do you not watch any more recent movies than 2007? Of course, it's Tom Myers. He doesn't. But still, just a bizarre reference to make.
There's a Titanic reference at one point.
Yeah. And totally off topic from this comedy special, but I watched a comedy special, or I should say a comedy segment from Tom Myers that was maybe filmed a year, maybe 2 years ago max. And he straight up had a O.J. Simpson murder joke in it.
We love to see it.
Just incredible. Tom's brain is beautiful. It has not aged a day past when he was like 23 years old. It's beautiful.
No, he really has built a mind castle.
Well, that and the Bill Cosby joke, that almost felt dated. But then again, that was a few years ago.
Well, that was his most recent reference.
Well, yeah, like even then, because it wasn't a few years before 2018 that they actually like charged him.
Yeah, it was like 2013-ish or so, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, my timeline's all messed up, but this man is definitely pulling information out of old newspapers he finds in his apartment.
Yeah, shit, dude. So I also wanted to mention there is a snakes on a plane joke in the special as well, where he fucks it up. His Samuel Jackson impression is awful. It's so bad. Anyways, so this whole bit is called Current Events, which current events in 2018 means referencing snakes on a plane. That is current events to Tom Myers. And also, by the way, a Paul Walker joke, which you mentioned that one earlier. Paul Walker didn't die in 2018. He died in 2013. Like, this is not current events.
It's really been that long. That is crazy.
Yeah,
fucking nuts. But the whole Samuel Jackson joke is GPS is releasing Morgan Freeman's voice as an option. He's like, but I want Samuel Jackson's voice, and I want it to say, I'm sick of these motherfucking cars in this motherfucking road. And the delivery is so bad.
Why didn't he say this motherfucking lane?
Yeah, it's just terrible. I don't even know what to say other than it's just terrible.
I think it further drives home that he is probably just a middle schooler with a hairpiece. Like,
well, these are all like epic Reddit jokes from like 8 years ago.
Well, you know what? I also totally forgot to mention this earlier, Brian, but Anthony is also our very first Zoomer on the show. So actually, let me make a possibly more...
You didn't tell me that you were bringing a Zoomer on the show.
Dude, I know they're always talking about how they want to kill themselves all the time. They don't fuck. I know, but I wanted to get some inclusion on here. I wanted to get some diversity on the podcast. I wanted to reach out to the youth.
That's more than I can say about most millennials.
Yeah. Well, listen, all right.
I'm going to go make a passive-aggressive post on social media on this. On God.
Yeah.
Is it going to be Facebook to like your neighbor's Facebook group?
Yeah, to my Nextdoor account.
Yeah.
Like, I was offended today by the younger generation.
And I was going to say, Anthony, of course, we got our very first Zoomer on the show. Why don't you have the Zoomer broccoli haircut? Why don't you have that haircut? Why don't you have an ironic 70s gay porn mustache?
Well, so I don't actively wish I was in Vietnam, first off. I do have a jacket from the time period that does say U.S. Army, but I don't have the mustache to go with it. I feel like I'm built a little different, I guess you could say.
Hell yeah.
Your life a movie.
Yeah.
Damn it, man. Well, see, like I got my first iPhone just 3 or 4 years ago. So, I'm doing better than most.
That's true. You got dragged kicking and screaming into the year 2007, which is also a joke that Tom Myers did. And it's like, no. You were dragged kicking and screaming into the year 2005 because that's your most recent reference, Tom Myers.
Well, see, in 2007, I was 9. So, we're learning alongside of, the millennial references.
The thing is, you won't understand where Tom is coming from because you don't know what it was like to watch the towers fall. You can't understand where guys like Tom Myers and I are coming from and why we have to make these dark, fucked up jokes that we make.
Now we just have like Pepe, and that's even dated.
That's pretty good, though. That Pepe stuff, pretty fun.
Hell yeah. It feels good, man.
It feels good, man. Yeah, good stuff.
But you know what? Speaking of Pepe's and politics, this whole politics segment, which I believe is the longest one on the album, there is so many incredibly bad jokes in here. So the one I wanted to mention, and what I think is maybe the single worst joke on this entire special, and that's saying something, is the Donald Trump sperm joke. I legitimately don't understand how anybody could possibly come to the conclusion of this joke. So the joke is, of course, Donald Trump, very old man. He has a young child. And Tom says that, like, at the moment of conception, he's probably like, oh, this is going to kill me, probably implying that he's going to have a heart attack while busting, I guess. And then he says that Melania has a ring, like a spy ring. I don't understand that reference. And instead of cyanide, there's Donald Trump's sperm in it. And at the moment of conception, as Donald was busting inside of her, she swallowed the cum in the ring. I'm trying to explain this joke.
Yeah, because this is the whole thing. I'm sorry I keep saying it. He just understands what the format of a joke is. There's no content to that. Yeah,
Also,
she ingested Trump's sperm.
Yeah.
And that's why she got pregnant with Barron.
Legitimately, does Tom think that you need... So, of course, he already thinks that you can fuck a woman with half your dick erect. I guess that's technically possible. But he also thinks to conceive a child, you need to both come inside of her and swallow. Just, like, I don't understand.
The thing is, too, is, like, there is something about Trump. I do believe that he doesn't really have penetrative sex and never really has that much. So there is, like, something interesting there if you workshop it a little bit. But aspiring with emergency come to... I don't know.
Well, and I've seen that oil painting of Donald Trump naked, and it is 100% accurate, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Well, and like the more I learn about Tom Meyer and dissect kind of his mentality, I'm pretty sure before coming up with that joke, he had recently watched maybe Special Agent Cody Banks from around the 2006 to 2010 timeframe. That are Spy Kids, because of course he's wanting to hang out with children so often. So I assume that translated to movies.
Yeah, that was local movie night at the Young Democrats of Harford County, putting on both those movies to watch.
Well, yeah, and in both, they're wearing the Ben Shapiro suit.
That is very true.
Oh.
And also, so there's obviously some very misogynistic material on here. Not even like edgy misogynist, just once again, just weird, gross misogyny. He talks about Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who, you know, of course, is not a very attractive woman. I think we can all agree on that. But he says, like, well,
I don't think that's necessary for us to go on record saying.
Well, okay, so I want that to be clear. I'm not saying that it's a derogatory statement, but Tom thinks it's a derogatory statement because he's like, well, she would never get sexually harassed. It's like, okay, Tom, tell me why unattractive women don't get sexually harassed.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's a fucking monstrous thing to say.
It is insane. It's like, oh yeah, Tom, that's the thing that unattractive women have never had to endure with is sexual harassment. Like, what the fuck?
I don't want to get too on my high horse about misogynist humor because I did, of course, give a pretty glowing endorsement of The Day the Laughter Died. I think I called it one of the best comedy albums ever. So, gonna hedge my bets here and say not cool, but mostly not funny.
Yeah, it's crazy how much Tom talks about women on this album, and there's a reason why he hasn't fucked or had a date in 7 years as of his own admission. Like, dude just doesn't understand sex, he doesn't understand romance, he has extremely misogynist, backwards attitudes. Like, what woman would want to be interested in Tom at all?
Well, the way that he thinks about and discusses sex is like, he seems kind of disgusted by it. It's actually a pretty common thing.
Well, he is an Irish Catholic.
He's stealing Catholic valor to me.
Well, he is, yeah, because he doesn't have 14 kids and he's not an alcoholic. That's not an Irish Catholic. I'm sorry.
Well, and he clearly doesn't have that crushing guilt hanging over him.
See, I would say he has like cucked lib vibes, but that would imply he was getting some ass at some point in time.
Yeah, that something was happening, that he was having some interaction that involved sex, which he's clearly not.
Yeah, like I think the only woman in his life is probably his mom, which he also mentions in his special. Who brings up your parents at like 35 in a comedy special?
Which, by the way, Tom lives with his parents, too, on top of that. Like, we need to make that clear.
And another special, a Tom Myers bit with potential is where he talks about his parents buying him like a burial plot with them.
Yeah, that's a great bit.
But it's almost like he doesn't get that it's funny.
Yeah. Well, that's like he ends it. He shits the bed on the landing by including a unfunny bit at the very end as the punchline. It's an incredible story that he shits the bed on. It's wild because he ends it. So it's this wild story about how his parents bought a burial plot next to him with his name on it. And then he ends it with, Mom, I wanted a GPS for Christmas.
It's like, no, the funny thing is that you have this bizarre dysfunctional relationship with your mother because you're a mutant.
Yeah, like the GPS doesn't need to be involved. That's not the joke, bro.
Well, the
He
joke
loves
should be that he's even asking for a GPS. I've got one sitting on a shelf right now that I should probably throw away.
You should send it to Tom. He loves talking about GPS.
Like, if someone doxed his mailing address, I would send him a GPS just to see if I'd get a response. So, friend of the pod, maybe that's how we get him to come up. We right his mother's wrong. We send him the GPS. Maybe we visit the burial plot.
Or we could go to every single Mexican restaurant in Hartford County and just hope to God we like run into him. That's a possibility too.
So did you say he was like a server at this restaurant?
Well, he started as a server, and then, as far as I'm aware of, he became an assistant manager at it. To his own admittance, he became an assistant manager because they needed his name on the liquor license. I don't know why they need his name on the liquor license, I guess.
They probably had too many fines, so they had to put somebody else's name
Someone
under.
that was an adult.
Yeah, he's like, listen, I got the local political hookup. You ever heard of the Democrats?
You ever heard of the Young Democrat Society?
Yeah.
Yeah, their meeting is here now if I'm signing this document.
Yeah.
We're just going to comp their tacos.
Yeah, God. And there's so many other just amazingly awful material on this album, but I've really exhausted all my input. Do you guys have any bits you want to talk about before we move on to some of the notes here?
There's no form to the bits. So it is interesting how awkward this guy is, how off-putting he is. But I listened to this 3 times. Every single time, I would just sort of tune out and I would forget that I was supposed to be listening to it and like considering it because there's so little there. It's so just like, I've got a cadence. I'm saying a thing. I'm forcing it together with this other phrase. That's a joke. The only other thing that I really want to bring up is, so the biggest laugh he gets in the special is when he says, my agent told me you have to write more jokes that appeal to the common person. Again, Tom is both an elitist and just contemptful of what he perceives to be the average person. I can't write jokes for the average American because I don't speak Spanish. Stupid loser joke. But then he says, and judging by the response to that, I can't write jokes for the average American in English. And the whole room laughs. It's the only time that happens, the entire special.
It's really sad. And actually, I do want to mention, one more bit that I remembered. So he talks about the former governor of Maryland and former mayor of Baltimore, which the TV show The Wire, the mayor in that show is based off Martin O'Malley. So obviously a very upstanding citizen. But whenever he says Martin O'Malley, he has like an Irish accent. It's very bizarre. Like it goes in and out a lot on this album. And I just don't really understand why. And
Well, he's a strawberry blonde. It came from somewhere.
Just sprung forth from him.
And then also during the politics bit, he says, I don't want to fuck Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I don't want to shit on Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I really don't. She's an awful person, but I don't want to shit on her too much. But Tom says, oh, I wouldn't have sex with Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I'd rather have sex with, Spicer. Sean Spicer. And someone out in the audience goes, really? And he keeps that in the special.
He's always making jokes about sex where he thinks like, oh, this is like a joke, a funny, zany sex joke. But it just shows that he's like a reptile.
It was the Young Democrats party. Like, didn't you know all politicians were reptiles?
Well, yeah, I know. I've been barking up that tree. That's why we started the show.
By the end of it, you want to like have Alex Jones on.
Well, I mean, hopefully sooner rather than later. Seems like it'd be pretty easy to get him on these days.
Yeah, he owes $1 billion.
Trying to get him and R. Kelly on.
We got friend of the pod, R. Kelly and Alex Jones.
Or Kanye and Alex Jones. They'd probably really get into the lizard business with you if you got them on.
So I would get Kanye, Billy Corgan, Alex Jones, and R. Kelly on, and I'd convince them to form a supergroup with me.
Aren't half those people from Chicago, which is the funniest part?
Yeah, R. Kelly and Billy Corgan and Kanye West are all part of the Chicago Libertarians Union.
That's right.
Billy Corgan once gave a speech in support of R. Kelly where he said, despite being of legal age, R. Kelly's still a black man in a cage. True story.
Well, given they're strapped for a little bit of cash, I can just see like a crudely spray painted like A-team work van with Millennials Are Old on the side doors of it going to pick up Alex Jones from his like Quality Inn hotel.
Yeah, it's like the A-team theme, but a chiptune or like vaporwave or whatever the fuck music.
No,
Brian,
there's vape smoke rolling out because, I'm driving the van, of course.
No, Brian, it's Nintendo Core, okay? Let's make that clear.
That shit.
Oh man. But so Anthony, I totally skipped over you here. Do you have any final thoughts before we move on here?
I'm okay. I think I really wrote it home that, I honestly think like he's kind of a husk of a guy. Like he knows what he wants to be and he's trying to get there very crudely, but he'll find his way or he won't. It'll just be an interesting time to witness what happens with this dude. It seems like not much is going to, but hey, we might be surprised.
It's certainly possible.
I mean, he was on Chapo last year.
That is true. The podcast that may no longer exist in the future. Possible RIP to Matt. The most literate Wisconsinite, as my friend Evan said about Matt Christman. All right, I have a couple notes here on some of the research that I did. So we went over most of them, but I did want to mention a couple things. So Louis J. Gomez on the Real Ass Dudes podcast, I think that's what it's called. He asked Tom specifically when Tom was on if he's doing a Day the Laughter Died style bit on his entire career, basically. And Tom didn't acknowledge it at all. Like, I don't know if he knows that's special or not.
So when you brought this up as sort of a comparison, a companion episode to The Day the Laughter Died, I really thought about that. Because I didn't think I'd have much to sink my teeth into with this record. But when I think about that like that, it's kind of interesting. They're sort of similar in that The Day the Laughter Died is like this very skilled comedian, very skilled at crowd work, very skilled at getting people on his side, basically using all of his tools to alienate the audience, to push them away from him, to force them to leave. Make America Innate Again is kind of a comedian who doesn't really have those skills, dragging the audience with him, forcing them through his bits, forcing them to come with them, and them just sort of, kind of murmuring after his punchlines. They have the same sort of discomfort. It's just crazy to me that someone would release an album that uncomfortable unintentionally.
And you know what's wild about it is there was a whole news interview where the local news brought Tom on to talk about this album release specifically. And the interviewer is incredibly nice to him. It's like the local ABC affiliate or something like that. And she asks him just blatantly, why did you get involved with comedy? Why are you still doing comedy to this day? And here's his mostly paraphrased answer. Not exact, but paraphrased. And here's his reaction to the question, why do you do comedy? He says, because it's my job. It's no different than a police officer running to the scene of a crime or a firefighter running into a burning building. It's just what I do. Mort Saul was blacklisted by Hollywood because he kept talking about the Warren Commission report on stage. Lenny Bruce was having obscenity trial after obscenity trial. One of George Carlin's bits was taken to the Supreme Court, so I'm not really doing anything any different than them.
I'm literally gonna fucking kill myself.
So there's so much to unpack about that. Obviously, Tom Myers is a cockroach on the shoe of all of those comedians. There's no comparison. He
Waiting
is not
to
Lenny
be
Bruce.
Stamped out. Yeah.
He is not
Lenny
George
Bruce's
Carlin.
life was ruined by the fucking government because his comedy was too subversive in the 60s.
Yes, both George Carlin and Lenny Bruce were sent to prison. I mean, George Carlin also, to be fair, did his legendary 7 words you can't say on TV, which is what led to the Supreme Court trial. And interestingly enough, Brian, Wisconsin connection, that comedy bit that he did where he got arrested for, once again, the 7 words you can't do on TV, was performed at Summerfest in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So Milwaukee Pigs arrested him for that bit. Fun fact of the day. So, but
Another
once again,
piece of the progressive history of that part of the state.
Exactly. So, and Lenny Bruce and George Carlin are, of course, connected because George Carlin was heavily influenced by Lenny Bruce, and George Carlin also went to bat for Lenny Bruce a lot while he was still alive. But yes, so Lenny Bruce, as you mentioned, his career was destroyed by his bits being too subversive. George Carlin was once again sent to jail. He had to go to the Supreme Court and argue his case, which unfortunately he eventually lost. What has Tom ever done other than get made fun of on Come Town?
Well, and that's the thing. He sees himself as this fucking provocateur. He always says things like, oh, my jokes are a little edgy. Backtracking a little bit, I just remembered there's another bit where he makes this joke that's like, my friend told me that every time he hears a word I say, he shudders. And I had to remind him that he's the one who decided to quit taking his anti-seizure medication. Jokes like that are probably why I'll never get into a major comedy club. Like, well, yeah, but not for the reason you think.
Yeah, that's the cleanest, most tame joke you could conjure up.
Yeah. No,
well, and see,
no
like, we can't
is hearing that and being like, fuck you. I mean, maybe.
We can't forget, like, given his special role in society of being elitist, but also oppressed, because he could live at home with his parents as a white male Democrat and make horrible shit jokes for a living. But, it's our fault that, it's going great in his eyes, but it's our fault that it's not going better because he's oppressed.
we don't understand it. We can't handle it.
You can't handle the truth of the situation.
That's a very recent movie reference to Tom Myers. And also, like, I genuinely believe that Tom Myers is a delusional narcissist. And I'm not saying that in like a derogatory, like I should say a horrifically derogatory way. Like, I don't think he's going to become like a murderer or something, but he is the definition of a delusional narcissist. He legitimately thinks, as you mentioned, Brian, that he's like this provocateur who is just setting the world on fire, and people who just don't understand him are like stupid and they just don't understand his genius. But he's like, no, you're just a bad comedian. You're a bad comedian who's 2 degrees above a shitty drunk open micer at a local comedy club. You're terrible.
If I could interject, your mention of him getting, like, you could call it bullied on Come Town, like, from a career perspective, that probably drove, that's my assumption on why there's such great ratings on Amazon, to be honest with you.
Well, to be fair,
You know.
all those reviews, as I may cover, because honestly, they're all jokes, and they're not particularly even very good jokes, if I'm being honest with you, but they're all...
That's right up his alley.
They're all joke reviews. But, like, the
Yeah.
thing is, right, is that I've had a theory over the last couple of days after listening to all this, that if Tom Myers really wanted to, and he still could theoretically do this, he could be the Tommy Wiseau of stand-up comedy. And I'm not saying that in the sense of...
He's not bad enough. He's not that interesting. He's not that bad. He's not bad enough to be fascinating to me.
So I agree with that for the most part. I would say some people agree, but like I say that theoretically because like, so Tommy Wiseau obviously made The Room, a movie that was an infamous bomb, but then later on people started appreciating it for being so bad it's good. And then eventually Tommy actually made his money back and now has a steady income, basically hawking himself as the person who made the world's worst movie. Tom Myers was legitimately offered by Nick Mullen $10,000 to be on Come Town. He turned it down. And that's the thing, though. He's that prideful. He's that much of a narcissist that he can't imagine even humbling himself for an hour for $10,000.
And that's interesting. That is at least a compelling character to observe. But Wiseau is like, I mean, that fucking movie's a mess, but he's like a visionary, for better or worse. You can't argue. He is like in his way an auteur. Nothing about Myers is, he never swings that hard, you know? He's so mediocre. He's so, I don't even know. I can't think of any other way to do it. There isn't really any vision there. It's just sort of this meat grinder thing. And okay, if I could just peel back the Lara skin on Tom Myers' face and just look at his brain and just see what you're talking about, that fucking malignant narcissist. I have so much pride. I'm such a dignified comedian. I'm like Lenny Bruce. If I could really get in there, but he never lets us see that. We just see this snark goofball thing that he thinks is endearing and I think thinks is like relatable to the everyman who he hates. I mean, I would love to have like a long interview with him where we could just break down into his psyche, but I just don't think there's anything there the way there is for Tommy Wiseau. I don't think there's anything that compelling in his core.
No, I will agree with that. And like, Tom Myers is legitimately somebody who believes that he just needs to try harder. He's also, you know, just like being a cucked lib once again, he believes in the American dream. He believes in the idea of, if I just put my nose to the stone, I can just fucking be a millionaire if I just keep doing comedy. But like, he's somebody who will drive to Indianapolis and make $30.
Pushing more of the financial aspect, you know, like a callback to a conversation we had off air, you know, 10 grand to go on a podcast. Like, you know, I'm here for free because I'm a hacker and, you know, I snuck my way into the.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah. But, you know, Taylor and I, we had a conversation earlier. I think it was a $200 proposition to like maybe pee on somebody. Like if it would be willing to do that. Man, I live on my own. This guy's with his parents and he won't take 10 grand to just.
I would do almost anything for 10 grand.
Like we were weighing out the options, like not the person to receive the urine, but to give the urine.
I understand.
Embarrassing.
So for the context, and I'm not going to dox them on this podcast, but there's somebody I know who's a trans woman who was on Grindr. I don't know why a trans woman would be on Grindr. I don't understand that, but either way, whatever, right? And they were offered by somebody $100 for them to piss in their mouth for $100. And I said, well, you know what? If all I had to do was show up to their house and just piss in their mouth and leave, I would do that for $100.
If I don't have to take part in any weird fantasy, that's all they. Yeah, although I would ask for more because you know if you can get 100, you can probably get 200.
Oh, yeah,
well,
absolutely.
The awkward bit was like being lost in thought. I forgot the exchange terms and conditions. So I thought Taylor was confiding in me that he would like accept $100 for someone to piss on him.
And I was like, no,
like a fundamentally different conversation. It's not like he's like approaching you like, hey, I've been thinking. I'd really like to get pissed on.
I was like, I know you pretty well, man, but this is new information for me. But man, for 10 grand, like I would let those guys guys run around. Like, I would do an exclusive on the street interview with them, like a day with Tom Meyer. I'd let him show up to my house, the Come Town guys.
This guy
For 10
has
grand?
some kind of principle, but I just can't figure out why. Because his comedy doesn't stand for anything that fucking great. It's not like it would compromise his integrity.
Have either of you looked into, is he on like Cameo or anything?
I never looked into that.
I did look at talking more about his career opportunities. He's not in big roles. He's on TV kind of a lot, like in bit parts.
Really?
He was on House of Cards.
He was on Veep. Like, as a comedian, that is how you make it. That's what, like, David Cross did for fucking 20 years. You just do these bit parts in movies and TV. So he works consistently enough in that capacity that could get him some non-ironic face recognition at some point. He is working, I guess.
It's just living in a day of the life of Tom Myers would just be insane for me. Like, I don't know. I feel like it would either feel like you're trapped in a fishbowl of understanding or that like you're just so depressed that you can't even tell other people about it.
I just don't know if I could handle feeling my brain swell up that much.
Oh, fuck. All right. But yes, with all of that, talk about just how depressing Tom's life is. That is Make America Innate Again. Do we have any final thoughts before we log off and we all go to bed? Because even though, Anthony, you are a Zoomer, you also have an early bedtime. You have to get your warm milk before you go to bed. Any final thoughts, guys?
I just wanted to say thanks for inviting me, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about some comedy with you guys.
No, we didn't invite you. You hacked on the show. You made that very clear. I just let you be here because I like you.
Okay, I guess. You know, my Shark VPN's been working super well, so you don't know where I'm at or where I came from.
I'm kidding, obviously. Anthony, it was great fucking having you on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
You're a longtime listener. You legitimately do listen to every one of our episodes, so we do appreciate that, man.
Yeah, I get a notification from Taylor keeping me updated. I got my personal notification from him, and this is my first time meeting you, Brian, and it's great to finally, you know, hear your voice organically responding to mine instead of just listening from third person. So this is awesome, guys.
Yeah, awesome. It was great meeting you. Final thoughts on Tom Myers. I mean, not really on this album. It's really boring. I feel like we've made it sound maybe more compelling than it is. But every time I listen to this, I kind of forgot I was listening to it. Relating it to, you know, the aging millennial thing and the generational politics bullshit. Tom Myers is certainly a millennial. He's not doing anything. He's stealing jokes, lazy and complacent, and he feels like he's a genius and everyone's going to recognize it eventually if he just keeps doing the exact same thing he's been doing his whole life. Again, similar to Arthur Chu, many of our aging millennial listeners, of which Taylor and I are, if you ever want to see a there but for the grace of God goes I example, look at Arthur Chu and Tom Myers.
No, exactly. That's exactly what I wanted to relate the Tom Myers and Arthur Chu connection. Once again, they're both the same age. Arthur Chu has certainly not done a failure to launch in the fact that he has a successful job, or at least I should say is, you know, successfully employed and owns his own home. But he
was married to a baddie.
Exactly. But also failure to launch in every other way possible, both those guys. Like, that is the millennial archetype. Like, let's be real here. And also just obsessed with pop culture. And of course, Tom Myers is obsessed with all the old ass pop culture on top of it.
Yeah, obsessed with 20-year-old pop culture and just the blandest sort of sense of humor you've ever heard. The most like, boy, wouldn't this be crazy if this happened thing?
Yeah, so Tom Myers and Arthur Chu, you guys should hang out sometime. You probably have a lot.
You should come on the pod.
Yes.
You're actually both good. I like you both. Taylor hates you, but I love you.
I hope if this happens, I can hack back in and like walk him through the pains of the bong transplant.
Oh, no, if we get Tom on, you'll be back on, Anthony. Like, for sure.
I listened to the Arthur Chu episode. I want to, like, strangle that guy just a little bit. Genuinely joking, but...
Parody.
But, you know, treat your wife like shit. Thanks.
Yeah, just the luckiest, meanest asshole in the world. With a fucking Chad brother going like, hey, maybe you should spend less time on the computer.
And, like, be nicer to your wife, yeah.
Yeah,
you don't
Giga
understand.
Chad.
What I'm doing is important.
They just need to date. Arthur Chu and Tom Meyer, forget about the women, forget about the sex, exchange phone numbers, and be miserable together.
Well, to be fair, Tom can't get hard, and Arthur Chu, we know for a fact, has watched a lot of gay porn. So you know what? They could have a good, healthy Pete Buttigieg and Chasten Buttigieg relationship together, if you know what I mean. Speaking of important things, though, let's get into our final pluggables. So you can follow me at Carlos Chantor on Twitter.com. Anthony, do you have anything to plug?
I do not.
Fuck. Brian, do you have anything to plug?
Follow me at John Stab on Twitter, JONSTABB. I am on the other social media, the fucking Blue Sky thing, but I keep forgetting about it. No one fucking posts on there. So I'm probably just on X until it explodes.
Hell yeah. All right. So yeah, without further ado, that is our review of Tom Meyer's Make America Innate Again. Thank you very much, Anthony, for coming on. Hacking on to the episode. Thank you very much for listening to us ramble about an irrelevant elderly millennial. I don't necessarily mean to talk down to you because, of course, you're 15 years younger than both of us. But I think it's really cool that you're the only Zoomer that listens to our podcast. So thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Probably like really the only person.
Well, I listen to every episode, and, I've always hung out with a slightly older crowd, but I think I can hang. I might not know all the pop culture and whatever, but, it's not all about that.
All right. Well, you know what? Without further ado, have a good night, everybody.